She had a green card for over 10 years. She worked as a nurse, paid taxes, raised 2 kids who were born right here in California. Then came the funeral. She flew home to bury her father, and when she landed back in LA, immigration pulled her aside. 6 hours, 3 agents, a question she never thought she'd hear. "Do you realize you may have abandoned your residency?" she cried. They detained her anyway. Her kids were waiting outside the terminal. No one told them why their mom never came out. This isn't a mistake. This is policy. And it's happening, quietly, legally, all across America in 2025. You don't see it on the news. But you feel it in every whispered phone call, in every canceled trip, in every permanent resident too scared to leave the country, or even speak up. The law didn't change much. But the way it's enforced? That changed everything. Now people are asking the question they never wanted to face. Is a green card still enough? But this is just the beginning. He was a permanent resident for nearly 15 years. No criminal record, paid every tax bill, coached his daughter's soccer team. But one day in April 2025, he was stopped at the airport in Houston coming back from his mother's funeral in Honduras. What happened next wasn't a mistake. It was part of the new playbook. They didn't accuse him of anything. They just questioned why he had stayed out of the U.S. for more than 90 days. He explained. They nodded. Then ICE officers quietly took him to secondary inspection and he didn't leave the airport for 2 days. This isn't isolated. According to Bloomberg, deportation proceedings rose 37% in the first half of 2025, many involving lawful permanent residents. And per Reuters, CBP officers have been granted more discretion. Green card holders who remain abroad for over 3 months may be flagged for review even without prior violations. The law didn't change, but the rules did, or rather, how the rules are used. It's called legal limbo, where you're not undocumented, but you're no longer safe either. Where a typo, a delay, a misunderstanding could mean losing your life here. Families are beginning to adapt. Some cancel travel, some delay surgeries abroad, some just live with packed suitcases, in case they don't let me back. And for many, the fear is no longer abstract, it's daily. But that fear? It's only part of what's pushing more people toward U.S. citizenship. There used to be a time when people saw naturalization as a milestone, a final step, taken when life finally slowed down. After the kids were settled, after work was stable, after retirement, citizenship was a formality, something people would get around to eventually. That time is gone. Now, in 2025, citizenship isn't a goal, it's a shield. The shift didn't happen overnight. It crept in through headlines, through whispers at community centers, through that one neighbor who didn't come back from vacation. It came when lawful residents realized doing everything right still wasn't enough. They worked, paid taxes, obeyed every rule, but when policy enforcement changed, quietly, strategically, their sense of security shattered. "I should have done this years ago," one woman said during a naturalization workshop in Phoenix. She had lived in the U.S. for 19 years, paid off a house, raised 3 children, but when ICE questioned her husband at work for a minor paperwork delay, she knew. Waiting had cost them peace of mind. The emotional burden is hard to measure, but impossible to ignore. Permanent residents live with invisible weight. Some carry travel anxiety, unsure if they'll be allowed back in after a funeral. Some avoid hospitals, worried their immigration status might complicate insurance. Some stop speaking out, at work, in school meetings, even online, just in case. Naturalization isn't just about paperwork anymore. It's about permission to exhale. Citizenship brings more than voting rights or a passport. It unlocks legal protections, federal benefits, job opportunities, and family sponsorship options. Most importantly, it offers something rare: stability that can't be revoked by a memo. According to CNN, June 2025, the number of applications for U.S. citizenship surged by 44% in immigrant-heavy counties after the reinstatement of expedited deportation zones. Many applicants say they waited too long, not because they didn't care, but because they didn't think it would get this bad. And here's the twist: it's getting harder to apply. Fee waivers are being limited. Processing times are up to 14 months. Policy language is shifting again, making even minor infractions grounds for denial. For millions who qualify, the choice is no longer when to apply, but whether they'll still be eligible when they finally do. And while some still hesitate, unsure about the test, the cost, or the language, others are urging them not to wait. A man in Chicago put it this way: "I came here for freedom. I stayed for work. I naturalized for my kids. Because this country may not protect me, but it will protect them." These aren't dramatic statements. They're survival strategies. Naturalization isn't about proving loyalty. It's about reclaiming a future that feels less and less guaranteed. And for many, it's already too late. But for those still waiting, still weighing the risk, still hoping the climate will shift, there's still a narrow window left to act. Because what happens next could close that window for good. When your voice doesn't count, you start to believe you don't either. That's the quiet erosion many immigrants live through. They pay taxes, follow the rules, raise families, build communities, yet they cannot vote. They watch laws pass that affect their healthcare, their children's schools, their right to stay, and they can't do a thing about it. It builds slowly, a sense of invisibility, a nagging thought: maybe I'm just a guest here, maybe I never really belong. But then something changes. A friend becomes a citizen and casts their first vote. A neighbor sponsors their parents to reunite after a decade apart. A coworker runs for local school board and wins. These aren't distant headlines. They're local victories, small but powerful, and they shift the way people see what's possible. Naturalization doesn't just remove fear. It unlocks power. It gives you the right to vote, to sponsor family, to apply for federal jobs, to serve on a jury, to raise your hand and say, "I helped shape this." According to AP, July 2025, immigrant naturalizations rose by 36% in counties where school boards passed exclusionary language laws. The article quotes a father from Florida: "I didn't care about politics. But when my daughter couldn't speak Spanish in class anymore, I realized I had to show up." Citizenship doesn't erase the struggle, but it turns silence into speech. And in that process, something deeper begins to shift, not just legally, but emotionally. People stop calling themselves immigrants. They start saying, "I'm American," not because of a paper, but because of a choice, a commitment, a moment where fear gave way to action. The community power doesn't come from one person naturalizing. It comes when thousands do. When neighbors show up together at workshops. When temples and mosques turn into civic centers. When legal clinics stay open past midnight, and volunteers still pour in. It comes when being a citizen is no longer about proving you deserve to stay, but about demanding the right to shape what America means next. And it's happening. In churches, corner stores, union halls, people are teaching each other how to apply. In WhatsApp groups, they're reminding deadlines. In hair salons, they're printing out the civics questions. That's how movements begin, quietly, then all at once. One woman in Queens summed it up best: "I don't want to be afraid anymore. I want to be counted." This is the moment where fear meets resistance. Where uncertainty meets resolve. Where those once silenced begin to speak, louder, together, and legally. Because belonging isn't about being allowed in. It's about standing up, and saying you're not going anywhere. And that's exactly what they're starting to do. It's strange how something as quiet as fear can change the course of a life. Not the kind of fear that screams, but the kind that whispers. That makes you pause before speaking up. That convinces you to stay just a little quieter, just a little longer, until you forget what it felt like to speak freely. That's the fear many permanent residents live with today. They don't talk about it loudly, but it shows up in small ways. In the funeral they don't attend abroad. In the vote they don't cast. In the letter they don't open, just in case it's from ICE. For years, they've tried to do everything right. And yet, they still wonder if the ground beneath them will shift. This video has never been about politics. It's been about people, people who've built lives here, raised children here, paid taxes here, and still feel like they're waiting for permission to belong. But what does belonging really mean? Is it a document, a ceremony, or is it something more invisible, like knowing your voice matters, even when no one's watching? The answer isn't simple, and maybe it's not supposed to be, because belonging isn't something you're given. It's something you decide, and that decision, to naturalize, to speak, to stay, doesn't always come with fireworks or headlines. Sometimes, it comes quietly, like a breath you didn't know you were holding, like the moment you stop waiting for permission. Some people say, why now? But maybe the better question is, if not now, when? Because what's at stake isn't just legal status. It's the life you've already built, the roots you've already planted, the family photos on your wall, the name your child writes on their schoolbook, American. And if you've made it this far in the story, maybe, in some way, it's your story too. Not because of where you were born, but because of what you believe a country should be. One that doesn't just let you in, but lets you stay. Not just in body, but in voice, in choice, in full. That kind of country doesn't appear overnight. It's built, slowly, deliberately, by the people who refuse to stay silent. The ones who turn fear into presence, uncertainty into resolve, paper into power, and maybe, just maybe, that begins with a simple decision, not to disappear, but to be counted.